gypsies and residents at war.
These are my people. They are human beings, and they need somewhere to live and educate their children.
What happens when the caravans come to town?
I don't think the village will survive. Houses are for sale in the village. If they want to sell, they've got to sell under market value. If everyone could move out tomorrow, I think everyone would leave the village.
Good evening. They've been with us for centuries, and they've never received a particularly warm welcome. But this year, hostility to gypsies and travellers is reaching new heights. Residents accuse the authorities of putting gypsies' rights above their own, and they claim that the courts are now allowing them to break the planning laws without fear of prosecution. It's causing tensions in towns and villages throughout Britain. But despite the local resentment, many travellers are now determined to put down roots, as Michael Nicholson reports.
A traditional way of life going back 1,000 years, and here celebrated at the annual Pretty Fair in Somerset. Romanies gathering from all over the country for a weekend of buying and selling, and in between the trading, time enough for some drinking, dancing and singing.
Our best friends must part now, and so must you and I. That's all I give you.
Today's gypsy travellers may have little in common with their nomadic ancestors who moved around by horse and painted caravans and made a living as horse traders and fruit pickers.
Can I come in?
Traditions that those like Maggie Smith-Bendel, who works for the Gypsy Council, are keen to preserve.
Sit down, my dear.
Yes, I will.
Sit down here on my lap. I've known a lady sat on my lap for a good few years.
This is Cushby, isn't it?
Isn't it?
So this is the original Romany first trailer.
This is the first gypsy trailer made after the horse-drawn wagons.
Of course, bloody lovely, isn't it?
Is it?
You even got the old radio there to
Yeah.
match, haven't you?
Oh, yeah.
In the range.
That's the host, the stove.
Yeah.
I don't think you'd find one today, anyway.
That is absolutely lovely to see it.
Charming, romantic even. But whatever image they'd like to project, they do have something of a PR problem. In Pretty, a morning that began with smiles ended like this. A violent punch-up between two feuding families and a trip to hospital for one unfortunate, bruised and battered traveller.
3014, can we have an ambulance, sir?
Right, come on then.
With such a reputation travelling ahead of them, it's no wonder that many residents recoil in horror.
Because the way they drive their vehicles through here, a lot of them are obviously drunk.
We have transit vans driven by sometimes 12-year-olds who obviously have no driving licence.
When we come home, there's either burnt out cars or rubbish dumped on the side of the road.
Worried people, and they've much to be worried about. If it was happening to you and me, we might be as worried too. It is the ability of thousands of gypsy travellers to buy up greenbelt land like this, set up home, and thumb their nose at authority. People who suddenly find themselves living near them feel rightly or wrongly threatened and invaded. And there seems very little that anyone can do to stop them. This is Craze Hill near Basildon in Essex. 3 years ago, Irish travellers bought land on the edge of the village. They then parked up their caravans and never left. It wasn't long before many more joined them until it became one of the biggest sites in Britain. Around 600 people live here now, and nearby villagers claim they've brought with them nothing but trouble.
The village shop is effectively classed by them as their shop. Local people don't frequent it anymore. The staff are intimidated and bullied by the travellers.
I decided to go down to the shop to get a couple of items, and my daughter came with me, as she often does. And as we were walking along the road, a car pulled up in front of the shop. I knew it to be a traveller from the accent, and I recognised him. As he got out, he called to me, and as I looked over to him, he was visibly urinating against the side of his car.
When you stand in the garden and you see black smoke peering over the tops of buildings and that, where they're burning furniture, the fire brigade are called on a regular basis to put these fires out because they're so toxic.
There's an environment problem. The ditches down there are full of rubbish, excrement, sanitary towels, nappies. There are rats down there.
When the GPO, electric light board or water want to go and do anything in the road, repair anything or update anything, they have to wait for police presence. It is a total no-go area for anyone unless they get police protection.
But despite such opposition, the travellers have bought up even more land on the fields beyond. They've repeatedly breached planning regulations by developing the site, putting in cesspits and building brick bungalows. Len Gridley lives next to the site. It's at the bottom of his garden. And he's understandably angry at the authorities for taking so long to do anything about it. In his view, it's blatant double standards.
My sister married a gypsy, so being racist against gypsies is a no-go. I've never racist. All I want is the law for everyone. That is a greenbelt site down there. It's always been greenbelt. If they want to change it, let them do what everyone else has to do, apply by the right rules, applications in before they move on to the land.
In fact, last year a public inquiry did rule the travellers had to go, but the Deputy Prime Minister John Prescott gave them a reprieve until May next year. But residents reckon that this has allowed the travellers to become even further entrenched and make it even harder to get them out.
Well, I would say they want it both ways. You've got a title here, traveller. What does a traveller mean? A traveller is a person who travels. It's a transient population. Therefore, how do we get around this idea that they can build on greenbelt land, which no one else can do?
Now, you might think that the villagers are exaggerating. Well, this is the Crays Hill Primary School, and 3 years ago there were 210 children here. Now, when the new school term starts soon, there'll be probably around 50, and most of those will be the children of the gypsies. Travellers, call them what you will. The villagers have simply pulled their children out and sent them elsewhere. Now, because there are so few children, the school budget's been cut, and in protest the headmistress has resigned, along with 9 of the 14 school governors. And so this little school is now threatened with closure. Kim Gandy was one of those governors. Concerned at the influx of traveller children, she removed her own 6-year-old son James from the school.
It was a very, very, very hard decision for me to make. In fact, it led to me, I became very ill over it because I didn't want to step out of the school. I didn't want to remove my child from the school because he was happy there. But obviously a 4 or 5-year-old doesn't realise he's not learning. A 4 or 5-year-old has no idea what he should be learning, but I knew that he wasn't. It became apparent that the education was being watered down to all and sundry, really. And once it reached that point and people started to discuss how their children were doing compared to how other people's children were doing in other local schools, it all suddenly came to a head.
Many travellers are not keen to be identified for fear of discrimination, they say. Jimmy is one of them. He denies the locals' allegations of antisocial behaviour. According to him, the travellers here do try hard to be good neighbours.
We'd like to say, how come the publicans haven't barred people? How come the people in the area to go in and sit down and have their dinner at the table next to the people off the side?
What you're saying,
there's never ever been an incidence of violence between any of the local people or the people from the side.
You're saying it's all made up?
It's all made up. It is all made up.
I get the impression, Jimmy, you mean to stay here?
Definitely. Yes, we mean to stay here. What choice do we have? Where do we go from here?
And that's just it. Jimmy and his fellow travellers have broken planning laws. But if they can't stay, just where can they go? Well, how about this unappealing option, an official site under a flyover in West London. The fact is that the law that once gave them some protection has long since been removed. Up until 10 years ago, it was law that every council had to provide a plot of land, a permanent site for the gypsies, travellers, call them what you will. But in 1994, Mr. Major's government repealed that law and instead simply recommended that councils did it, and most councils did not. So as the population of these people has increased over the years, so too has the pressure for space. There is an urgent need for more permanent council-controlled sites, but at the moment only around a third of all local councils currently provide any official sites at all. And most, like this one in London's Hammersmith, are crammed into unwanted, virtually uninhabitable plots. This isn't typical, is it?
Well, unfortunately, a lot of sites are located in marginal space. Government research.
Is that what you'd call this marginal space? Under a flyover?
Well, yes. I mean, some are next to railway lines, sewage works, rubbish dumps. Government research estimates 70% of sites occupy space like this. I think a lot of people wouldn't be allowed to live in conditions like this, but it seems to be acceptable in some minds for travellers to be able to live in very poor conditions, and I think that has to change.
But it's not changing, is it?
No.
So for the privilege of living under one of the busiest, noisiest flyovers in London, and with the constant worry of things falling on top of the caravans, the travellers here pay the council around £60 a week, plus bills. I'm told that, and I find it very hard to believe, that there's a waiting list to come on this site.
That's right. There's a waiting list for sites across the country because there's a shortage of traveller sites.
Well, I can see why there's a waiting list for some of these greenbelt sites, you know, moving into rather nice countryside. But there's a waiting list to come to this place?
Yes, because it's better than living on the side of the road like some families have to. And the problem is, since the abolition of the duty on councils to provide sites, the shortage of sites has grown and grown. And not only has it had a negative impact on the well-being of travellers, but it's also had a negative impact on people in house in the settled community.
Back in Hull, the bailiffs have returned.
Right, boys, here we go again.
They are demonstrating once more that the law is usually not on the traveller's side. Overnight, this group moved on to a leisure complex, parked up their caravans. And by dawn, the owners had called in Brian Lacoche's firm.
Hello, love. We're from Constant & Co. with the bailiffs. We got a notice for you to require you to leave by 11 o'clock tomorrow morning. Can you manage that okay? Where do you travel in this area normally?
No, we're just passing through.
All right. Okay. Thanks for that. You got somewhere else to go then?
No.
You'll find somewhere. Okay. Bye-bye now.
Thank you.
See you. Bye.
This firm specialises in evicting illegal travellers, and according to its managing director, business is booming.
Did we count up, Len? Did we have a count of how many?
20. Yeah.
So the warnings are issued, the notice is served, and if the travellers are still here tomorrow, their caravans will be towed from the site. This one firm of bailiffs deals with up to 100 similar cases every month.
Got a notice for you to be gone by 11 o'clock tomorrow. All right?
So for most travellers, this is routine, and they move on. But there are others who do not, and they seem to be the winners.
They arrived on a Friday, and by Sunday night there was a fully fledged camp. You know, road network, water networks, electricity. You know, telephone supplies. I mean, the whole thing.
On the Saturday morning, we had some chaps come in to dig our drive up, put some electric cables in. He said, "Oh, do you realise there are gypsies up the road?" And I said, "Pardon me?" He said, "Oh, they've moved into the field." And what they'd actually done is they'd come along with their JCBs, punched a hole in the hedge, and driven all their traffic in, and they were starting to clear the site.
This is Minety in Wiltshire. Here, a group of 16 families bought 2 acres of greenbelt. Then, very rapidly, in what's been described as a military-style operation, set up dozens of homes, mains, electricity, internet and all. But this time, The judge was on their side. He said they had flagrantly and deliberately breached planning laws, but he added it would cause them undue hardship if he had to move them on. The Minety residents were not surprisingly outraged, but the Gypsy Council member who masterminded the move remains unrepentant. If you'd gone about it, as people say, the right way, putting in planning permission, getting that permission, and then coming in, you wouldn't have, raised all this temperature, would you?
And we wouldn't have had a base to live on.
Because you got no, no, no.
Because we get no, no, no. In this particular council, I've also put in 2 other pieces of land for the council to tell me whether they would be suitable for a permanent gypsy site. And that was a year ago. I've not had any replies on that land. They've not looked at that land. They've had no meetings with me on that land. They absolutely dismissed that land. And that's how I'm treated, I'm sorry to say, all over the country.
There's no stopping you then?
No, no way, no. These are my people. They are human beings, and they need somewhere to live and educate their children. And hopefully this is where it's going to be done from.
Maggie says that government information shows that 90% of planning applications by gypsies fail at the first attempt. She wants to help mothers like Kelly, who without a permanent home, she's been unable to get proper schooling or healthcare for her children until now. You get other problems on the road?
Yeah, we do. We get pelted with stones, get called gypsies, verbal language, we get everything. It's ridiculous what we do get. We even get big children running the little ones.
Bullying them?
Bullying them ain't the word. You can't walk down the street half the time. And then when you do find somewhere to come, they want you to move on.
Is that why you're happy to be here, because you've got a permanent base?
Yeah. We haven't got stones being chucked at us and eggs and things. Just ain't got... Well, it's like its own family, innit? It's like my little girl, she's got dental problems. It's the biggest job in the world to find somewhere long enough to stop to get her teeth even sorted out.
Let's have a look at your teeth. Let's have a look. Oh, you got a bad tooth there? Yeah? Violet is another traveller, married with a 5-month-old daughter and a 3-year-old son who suffers from haemophilia.
I've struggled through the world, and as a mum with 2 children, to read to the best of my ability. But as to say that I've had any education, no, I haven't. So I've picked it up as I've gone along, sort of thing, and got through it the best way I could.
Because you were always on the move?
Yeah, yeah.
And you're not prepared to see your kids go through the same thing?
No, I'm not. Amongst the country, children of different races is going for computer courses and things like that. It's just now that we're learning to read, because we've not had the help and been in the situation to say, look, we are human beings, we're British citizens, we're born and bred in England, and we need to have, even if it's just a small part, to be recognised.
Why do you think even today, in this kind of multicultural, multiracial society we live in, people still have this suspicion of gypsies?
Because people don't know us and they only know others, but don't know us as individual people. We always get classed as that, they're thieves, they're up to no good, gypsies carry this tale behind them. I don't know, it must come from generations of generations. But I can honestly say, as a person, I've never been in trouble. I haven't been out, getting drunk and smashing windows and things like that.
Even the disgruntled Minety residents accept that the travellers have caused little trouble. But the fact remains that they've flouted planning laws and a judge is allowing them to do so. If that isn't enough to upset the locals, this surely is. Are property prices affected as far as you know? Because you get around this with it, don't you? You get around this area.
Yeah. Property prices are estimated at the moment to have fallen by about 40 to 45%.
Now, that's what they're saying. Is it true?
Yeah. To be honest, if this house was on the market and I was looking for this type of premises, with a traveller camp based next to it, I simply wouldn't buy it. I think that sounds quite harsh, quite firm, but I don't, I think I would look at alternative areas to buy. So, in my view, just in my opinion, I deem it as unsellable.
As I say, it's incredibly difficult to quantify. I don't think it's as big as 40 or 50%. I think it's probably more accurately somewhere like 10, 20%. I think maybe 20% would be more accurate. The example we had, a cottage where the buyer was lost over the weekend that the travellers moved in. We saw probably about, well, it was £400,000, and the next nearest offer after the travellers moved in was £330,000. So there's a significant drop, £70,000 as a result, directly as a result of that travellers site being established. And as I say, it just happened over a weekend.
And all this is yours?
Yes, this is ours.
Prices may be falling, but some are considering taking the loss. A public inquiry next year may yet see the travellers being forced to quit. If not, then it could be the residents who'll be moving out.
I think it would break our hearts if we had to move away from here. We've made a lot of friends who've been very, very helpful, and of course we put a lot of work and time into it, and also a lot of money. You know, we've invested all our savings and everything like that into the property.
Back in Hull again, and the travellers who've moved on to the leisure park are still there, 24 hours after being served with the notice to quit.
Nice car, look, brand new BMW.
Mercedes even.
It's even a Mercedes.
So the bailiffs and the police are back.
Locking themselves away. Morning. All right, darling.
Afraid you're not going to be able to stay on here this morning, my duck.
It's the same landowner, darling.
It's all that, it belongs to the same landowner.
Notices yesterday, and this here belongs to them as well. So I'm sorry you're going
broken through the fences and everything.
You're going to have to leave. Is the man about?
Yeah, it's all right, we'll leave.
Okay.
All right, darling.
Yeah.
You're going to leave. All right.
Thank you.
Who's the man with this caravan? Is it gentleman
Hello,
over
Dougie.
here? Is that him?
Is he hiding?
I'll tell him, I mean.
Okay. How long before you can get packed up?
Next hour or something?
Yeah, we'll give you a bit of time. I mean, there's no problem with that. But as long as we
like
can see
an
you
Arab.
packing up and everything, that should be
Is it?
okay.
It's the same.
All right, darling. Thank you.
It's the same landowner.
Tell him to off with that camera so I'll run out of his ass.
All right. So for them, and like so many generations before them, it is time to move on to the next site. And who knows where? And the solution? Well, campaigners want the law restored that makes it a statutory duty on councils to provide the travellers with a suitable permanent site, not appalling, degrading eyesores that aggravate everybody. Who knows? Maybe then we might find time to live as good neighbours.
And the wind screams clearly.
Michael Nicholson on the age-old war between travellers and homeowners. And that's all we have time for this evening. We're back with you on Friday night at 8 o'clock. Until then, from all of us here, good night